before. And at that time, the United States government had what was called a relocation movement going on, where they were paying people, enticing people to leave the reservation. So I don't know if that's the reason my mom ended up down there in the cities or not, but different ones went like from Red Lake to Chicago, Red Lake to as far as LA. And the reason being is, like I said, they were trying to take us away from our homeland. And if you study the American Indian history in our homeland, something that has been, I refer to it as the world's best, the United States' best secret, not the world's, because I think people of color from other countries have been through similar histories. And so that's why, I don't hesitate to share this story, because it's a little known fact, even been denied, not only other people, but our own people as well. And when I moved back to Red Lake, my birthplace, in '89, it was to develop archives, and this was through the idea and the vision of my uncle, the late Roger Jourdain, who was the chairman of our reservation, the first elected chairman, and held that office for 31 years. And the first mention I heard of the archives and library was when I was up home for a graduation. And he was telling our young people how important it is to get their education and go on and get skills that they can bring back to the reservation. And at that point in time, he mentioned archives in a library. And you know that they say knowledge is power, and that our history having been denied, we needed to start collecting it. And our way of passing on our history was through oral tradition, like one generation would tell another. And then we realized that in our constant day-to-day struggle, and what had happened with the boarding school era, taking our kids at a young age and away from the home, that our family units were not only affected, but the knowledge of our people wasn't being passed on. But there are still some things that have managed to come through, that I speak of today, and I speak of through what I learned from oral history as far as who we are, and that they stole Upper Red Lake. They outright stole Upper Red Lake, like they did most of Indian land throughout the United States. Here in Red Lake, as I said, we're a closed reservation. It's because in 1889, well, our first treaty was 1863. We gave up land then, and then again in 1889, and then in 1902. It was a giving and a giving and a giving. And in return, we were supposed to get certain rights, certain inalienable rights, and certain to hunt, fish, and gather berries across the land, even if it wasn't within our diminished reservation. And the oral history, the way I was told, is that when they came here in 1889, in the United States, it was called an act, the Dawes Allotment Act. Have any of you ever heard of the Dawes Allotment Act?
Yeah, I did.
You did. The Dawes Allotment Act was in 1887, and what that did was it went out to Indian nations, because our okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. They went out. The government commissions went out to Indian nations and said, "Well, hey, you here in Red Lake, you got all this land. You don't need it." And that's what they were telling Indian people, that they had an excess of land that they didn't really need. And so because of certain conditions of other bands of Anishinaabe and other tribes, they were in such condition that they were still trying to cooperate in that sense, and were pushed in a corner. And so they decided, that we need to feed our kids, we need to survive, and we will give up our land. And so then you have like allotted reservations, which means you go into Leech Lake and you spend some time there in Cass Lake, you go over to White Earth, and you see it on a map. But that map is deceiving, because it looks like there's a lot of land, but actually White Earth only owns about 7%. They're buying it back now, trying to get their land back that was stolen and taken through allotment. And then Leech Lake has 10% or some vice versa. It's either 10 or 7. I can't remember the specifics. But here in Red Lake, we didn't chop up our land. Allotment is like a checkerboard. And that is to say that there's Indian land, non-Indian, Indian land on these other reservations. But when you cross that border, where we used to have a passport required sign at the beginning of the entrance of our diminished reservation, it's stated clearly that passports are required. Right now, the only thing that's out there is, in regards to our laws here, the land is that business ordinance. And just the other day, I was sitting over at the casino having lunch, and I seen a woman interviewing some of our members, and it was for that personal care attendance. And that's America's probably the most recent ploy against the poor people, is to, these companies have sprung up and they can pay people whatever they so choose to take care of someone at home. So then the American government is saving money, because right now some of our elders have opted to go back home for personal care attendant, but they don't get the training perhaps that they need to take really good care of our elders as they would over at the home. And anyway, so this Allotment Act and a closed reservation, that's what it means. That because we never gave up the diminished reservation and agreed to allotment, that they were told when they were here in 1889 that their mission here was a failure, that our people wanted to preserve the land for generations to come. And that's basically what Red Lake closed reservation means. That we didn't give in to the United States government, that they did not place us here as they did a lot of American Indians. They took them, removed them from their homeland. You probably all are familiar with or have heard of the Cherokee Longest Walk, the Trail of Tears, and other tribes as well. It's just that they honed it down to act like it was only the Cherokees that they removed. But there's a considerable amount of other tribes displaced and replaced onto another area. And so, and just one more mention of 1889, because I'm not going to go year by year, no, until we get up to 2008. And is that the act was known, it wasn't the Dawes Act when it came to Minnesota, it was the act known as a civilization. This tells it all. Civilization and relief of the Minnesota Chippewa. You know? So what are they saying? You know, in 1889 we still needed to be civilized. What's up with that? You know, they wouldn't allow us to do our ceremonies, but our ceremonies survived in spite of the, you know, them trying to outlaw it. And then relief, what are they saying? We couldn't take care of ourselves, we didn't know how to survive off the land. And that was the other thing that I shared with the group that came in earlier, is that farming was in the act, that they wanted us to become farmers in the sense of their farming ways. You know, you stay on one plot of land, you own that plot of land, you deplete that plot of land till it's, you know, the nutrients are all, you know, vanished. And but whereas we were traveling around in our clan system, and so we were referred to as nomads. So all these things that were intended to be our way and our belief and our, you know, our harmony with our environment, we're being denied, and now all of a sudden everyone's going green. Well, hell with that. The Indian we were green for ages, you know, and now, you know,
It's one of my pet peeves.
You know, so now it's come around. You know, that we've all come full circle, even our own people. You know, it's, you know, some people will say, hey, you know, if you respect the earth, you know, you take that. And you say Mother Earth, and I try to tell our young people, Mother Earth, you know, Mother Earth, stop and think, what does that mean? Our mother, the earth, you know, and would you go throw a pop can on your mother's lap? It's the same thing. It's no